Semaglutide is not the enemy. It can be used and it can be used in the right way. But it is a tool, and like any tool, it can damage if it can cause damage if it's used in the wrong way. Why you're gaining weight on semaglutide and how to stop it. Boom. Welcome back, everybody. My name is Dr. Mark Shankman. Welcome back to the Obesity Project, episode 46. Today, we're talking about why you're going to gain weight on these GLP-1 agonists and how to stop it. So let me go ahead and start with a hard truth that most people on semaglutide are not hearing. If you're not losing the right kind of weight, then you're setting yourself up for worse health down the road. And so you've certainly seen the headlines, miracle drug, game changer for obesity. And yes, GLP-1 agonists like Ozempic, Wegovy, Mounjaro are all powerful tools. And I've even used them myself. But here's the problem no one is talking about. Most patients are losing muscle and bone, not just fat. You do lose about 40% of your weight loss from fat-free mass, which is your muscle and your bone, along with water and other things. But most people are losing muscle and bone, not just fat. And then when they stop the drug, they gain the weight back as 100% pure fat. So today, I'm breaking down what semaglutide is really doing to your metabolism and how you can use it wisely or come off it without wrecking your long-term health. So let's talk about what semaglutide or these GLP-1 agonists really do. So semaglutide is the one that I actually used. I did get a generic form from a compound pharmacy, so I didn't get one of these pens that you see behind me from a physician. However, what it actually does, what these GLP-1 agonists really do, is they mimic a natural gut hormone. And here's what it does very well. It does slow gastric emptying. So it slows down the process of food and the breakdown products of food going through your stomach and then passing into your small intestine. It slows that process down. And so as a result, you feel much fuller. You feel full longer. And this is, of course, a benefit if you're trying to decrease the amount of food that you're eating. It does also directly suppress appetite, so you absolutely eat less. And I did find this in my own experience. It also does improve insulin sensitivity, especially in diabetics, and it will lower your A1C and blood sugar. Sounds great, right? So here's what it doesn't do and doesn't do well. Does not preserve muscle, does not encourage fat oxidation or fat burning or fat breakdown. It doesn't teach your body how to regulate hunger normally and naturally. And it doesn't build metabolic flexibility, meaning being able to switch from sugar burning to fat burning and back again. So yes, you're absolutely eating less, but if you don't change your macronutrient quality and preserve lean mass, then you're losing weight at the expense of your metabolic engine. So this part is critical. When people lose weight on semaglutide without strength training and protein support, about 30 to 40%, as I mentioned, of the weight loss is lean body mass. So let's break that down. Let's give you some numbers. So if you were to lose 40 pounds, up to 16 of those pounds could be muscle and bone. And what else happens? Well, your basal metabolic rate drops because your caloric intake drops and your body is going to adjust by burning less calories. And your strength and your function decline. Your bones will weaken. And then if you regain the weight, which most people do after stopping the drug, it all comes back as fat. So now you've lost muscle, you've added fat, and you made your insulin resistance even worse. And this is what I call the semaglutide trap. So you look lighter on the scale, but you're metabolically worse off. And there was a study in JAMA, or Journal of the American Medical Association, in 2022 which showed significant lean mass loss among semaglutide users without dietary or resistance training support. So that's the big deal. And this is exactly my point, is that when I used the semaglutide, I did put these pieces in place. I did get body composition monitoring. I met with a dietitian on a weekly basis. I started doing resistance training and made sure through that body composition monitoring, I made sure that I wasn't losing muscle and I wasn't losing bone. So, so what's the solution? The solution is, if you're currently on a GLP-1 medication or considering to start one, here's how you use it the right way. So the first thing you need to do is prioritize protein. And you need at least 1.6 grams per kilogram per day. That's about 100 to about 150 grams per day for most adults. And of course, there's a range. So 1.6 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight per day. And why is this? Well, because protein is essential for muscle retention, for satiety, and insulin control. The second thing you need to do is you need to lift weights 3 times per week. And resistance training signals your body to keep muscle even during weight loss. And this is absolutely non-negotiable. And this holds true for men or for women. Even the women have to lift weights. You're not going to bulk up. You're not going to look like Arnold Schwarzenegger. You are going to just get the right kind of weight loss and not lose muscle. And then you need to track body composition, not just scales, right? Not just the weight on the scale. And you can do this through a number of different means. You can do DEXA scan, which is the most ideal way of tracking body composition. You can use InBody, or there are different scales that, like, my dietitian had a particular scale that was a very, very accurate body composition monitoring. And or you can use tape measurements. That's sort of the inexpensive way of going about doing it. The cheap man's way of without seeing a dietitian, without someone having a very expensive body composition monitoring scale. So we need to know what kind of weight you're losing. We need to know, is that weight coming from fat, or is it coming from lean mass or muscle or bone? So, and you need to think about this as short-term use only. And this is the big thing that is different than what the doctors and the big pharma companies are telling you, is that these drugs work best as a bridge, not as a lifestyle. If you talk to your doctor, if you talk to big pharma, they're going to tell you you need to start this medication and then you need to stay on it forever. You need to stay on it forever. Otherwise, you're going to gain the weight back. And there are ways to wean you off this medication and not gain that weight back, but you need to do this in combination with medical professionals. And we need to use these drugs to break the hunger craving cycle. Then we need to taper them down while reinforcing nutrition and strength. It can be done. You can lose the weight that you want from fat, not lose muscle and bone, and preserve that muscle and bone as you wean yourself off and come off the drug. And I will tell you that, there was a New York Times article that said roughly about 70% of people that start these drugs 1 year later will come off of them. And here's the reason why. Here's why it's so hard to stay on these drugs. I myself only used it for about 2 to 3 months. I think it was actually about 2 months. But it's very hard to stay on these drugs simply because it takes away one of the great pleasures of life. Eating is one thing that a lot of people really enjoy. And when you take these drugs, you lose your appetite, or worse yet, you get some GI upset and GI distress. And when you're nauseous and you're not feeling very well, eating is definitely the last thing you think about, and it destroys your ability to enjoy food. And over the long haul, that's a very difficult thing. As a short-term thing, totally easy to do. But imagine going the rest of your life on this medication, not feeling hungry, not maybe feeling queasy or nauseous, and then not enjoying your food any longer. So too many semaglutide patients eat tiny portions of high carb junk, thinking that it's healthy. but they're actually underproteined, underfed, and losing the wrong types of tissue. All right, so let's talk about a real life case. Let me introduce you to Melissa. Melissa is in her mid 40s. She's about 60 pounds overweight. She has an A1C of 7.2, and she started on Wegovy. In about 3 months, she was down 22 pounds. Great, right? Really good report. But her muscle mass dropped dramatically. She had no strength, no energy, and was plateauing. And after she and I spoke, she made a couple changes. So first thing she did was she introduced protein goals and added creatine, and then switched to full body resistance workouts 3 times a week. And then by month 6, her weight loss continued, but her lean mass stabilized. Her strength returned, her energy improved, and her A1C dropped below 5.8. And she began to then taper the drug down. And that's the right way to use a pharmaceutical, is as a bridge, not as a crutch. So in closing, semaglutide is not the enemy. It can be used and it can be used in the right way. But it is a tool, and like any tool, it can cause damage if it's used in the wrong way. So here's the big idea. Weight loss is only worth it if you lose fat and keep your muscle. If your body composition gets worse, it doesn't matter what the scale says. So whether you're on a GLP-1 medication, considering one, or trying to wean off, remember, it's not just about losing weight. It's about changing your metabolism. You deserve more than a smaller number on the scale. You deserve a stronger body, better hormones, and metabolic control that lasts over the long term. So thank you so much for watching. I really appreciate your attention. I hope you learned a little something about these medications. Again, they are a tool. They should be considered in your toolbox, but they need to be monitored. They need to be, you can't just go to a doctor, get a prescription, get these medications. Oh, one other thing I didn't mention that I think is worth mentioning. The regimen is to start small and then increase the dosage up. And you're building up a tolerance to these drugs. So you basically are becoming addicted to these medications. And so when I went through this journey myself, I stayed at that lowest dose and never exceeded that lower dose. It still continued to work for me. Maybe not as well as in the beginning, but I also didn't have a lot of GI upset as a result of that. And you can continue to use this at a baseline level, low dose, and then it makes it easier to wean off. But you need to be monitored. You need to get your body composition monitoring done. You need to make sure that you're patched in to other medical professionals and that you're not just getting a prescription, picking up the drug and injecting yourself all the time without any kind of follow-up or any kind of medical supervision. So, again, be mindful, be thoughtful with these medications. They can be useful, but in the short term. So thanks so much for watching. Stay tuned for the upcoming episodes. Make sure to like, share, subscribe. Do all those fun-filled and exciting things you need to do on social media. And I will catch you in the next video. Thanks so much for watching.